Okay friends, the first thing we have to do to get started on our job is to safely raise and support the rear of the truck so the wheel's off the ground. After that, remove all of your lug nuts and then remove the wheel. Okay friends, something for you to keep in mind. Before we go ahead and start tearing this apart, I want to make sure that you have an axle seal available for this because of course we're going to be taking off the hub, we're going to be probably damaging the seal. Now with the wheel off of there, the next thing that I'm going to want to do is come over here to where the flex hose mounting bolt's supposed to be. There's supposed to be a bolt that goes right into here. Ours is broken off obviously, so I'm going to have to go ahead and fix that later. But for you, go ahead and carefully remove it. After that's removed, let's go ahead and remove these two caliper bracket bolts. Before I remove those, I'm going to make sure I have a bungee cord handy. That way there, once I remove it, I can hang my caliper from it. Let's start that back in just a couple threads here and remove the lower one. Carefully remove your caliper and hang it so it's putting no pressure on your flex hose. Next, you're going to remove your brake rotor. If it's stuck on here, you can carefully spray some penetrant along the stud area and give it a couple loving bonks along this area. Now the next thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you have a collection bucket underneath this area. We're going to remove these bolts and there's always the possibility that gear oil is going to come out. Slide this out of here. Now the next thing we want to do is remove the nut that's located in here. You're going to notice that it's not a regular nut. It's something that you're going to have to use a tool that looks like this to get off of there. It has 4 prongs and they need to fit into those grooves. Take this out, set it aside. Now with that nut off of there, this is nice and loose. Let's continue on by pulling it off. Sometimes you're going to have to use a little bit of prying. As you remove this, be careful not to drop your forward bearing. Let's get the rest of the seal off of here. All this area that's stuck on the axle is part of the original seal. Let's just take a rag and put it in here for now. So now we need to start removing these emergency brake shoes. For me personally, I'm going to be replacing the shoes, the hardware, and the backing plate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut these springs because I have new ones. If you're not replacing them, then you need to be careful not to damage them during the replacement process. So there should be a spring right down here that goes from this hole to right there. Ours is missing, but essentially you can grab onto it with some needle nose pliers or even some cutters like this and carefully pull it off of there if you're not replacing it. After it's off, I'm just going to go ahead and spread these shoes and I'll remove the adjuster. Set this aside for now. Now we're going to move up to doing these springs right here. Just be careful with them. There's one spring on the outside and one on the inside. There's that spring. Now with the outer spring off of there, the easiest way to get the inner spring off is to actually move along to removing the anchor points next. So if you just press in on this right here, you can twist the little pin that comes through from the backing plate towards the front so that it lines up and then you can slide it off. Remove the pin from the backing plate, do the same to your other shoe. Now we can grab onto the emergency brake shoe and work it out of its mounting point. Before we go ahead and put on our emergency brake shoes, let's add a little bit of grease to this area. We're going to come along this, right up on each of these raised points on the backing plate, right along here, and then of course along the back side as well. Now it's going to be time to put on our emergency brake shoes. We're going to take the larger of our springs that came in the kit. I'm just going to slide it through like this. You'll notice I have the longer side coming through towards the rear of the truck. Now once this is on here, we're going to continue on to sliding it onto this area. And now we're going to put this area up and over here and onto where it belongs. Now let's put in the other upper spring. This one goes along the outside. I'm gonna come right like this. Now you can see I have both sides fully in there and nothing's hanging out. You want to make sure that it's completely on because you don't want it falling off while you're driving down the road. So now we're going to take one of our pins and one of our locking clips here, slide it through the backing plate hole, and then through the shoe. Once it's through the shoe, I'm going to put it so it's facing straight up and down, and then we'll take our clip. You're going to notice that the clip itself has a slot as well. That's going to be lined up facing up and down. Now I need to press in on this clip. Once I have it in far enough the pin comes through, we're going to twist the pin and lock it in. Okay, so now I have the pin sitting in the groove right here. There's no way that it's going to come falling out of there. Let's continue on to putting on our adjuster, and then we'll come over and do the other pin. Let's get our adjuster on there with the spring. Now to do this, it's going to be easiest if you go ahead and start the spring in, just like that. Now we'll take our adjuster. We're going to pull on this rearward shoe, separate it, slide the adjuster in through the back. Double check to make sure your adjuster is sitting in the groove. This one right here looks like it needs to be pushed down. There we are. Now it's completely in the groove. It's definitely not going to fall out. Let's get that other pin and clip in. So now that I have it all back together here, we just want to double check everything. Make sure these are turned so they're definitely locked in. Make sure all your springs are latched into the shoe, and of course the adjuster is in the proper area. Everything here looks great, so let's continue. The next thing I want to do is take some light sandpaper and come along this area here. Any places that you can feel that are raised, you want to make sure that they're cleaned off. This is where the seal is going to ride, and it needs to be clean. Now on the back side of this, we want to get ready to remove this seal along here. Typically what you would want to do is get right underneath it and then try to pry it off. But obviously it's going to want to wobble around on you. If you don't have a vise, then just go ahead and take it like this. We're going to come along this edge between the actual hub itself and the seal, give it a couple bonks and try to break it free. Grab this out of here. That's part of the seal. Now you can remove the bearing, clean down your bearings, and clean out the entire inside area here. Now that we have this all cleaned up, let's continue on to getting ready to install our inside bearing. That's the one that's going to be closest to the backing plate. To do that, you want to just apply a little bit of the differential gear oil to the actual bearing and then work it around. Once you have it on there, go ahead and slide it in here. Then we'll grab our seal and install that. Now it's going to be time to install the seal. Look along the backside. Right along here, there's a little spring. You want to add a little bit of petroleum jelly to that area just to help ensure that the spring stays in there. After that, set it down so it's flat going into the hub assembly here. I'm going to use a flat piece of wood over it, and then I'm going to hammer this down. Now let's get this on the truck. I'm just going to put it on approximately halfway like this so it exposes this inside groove right along here. Let's apply some of that gear oil. I'm just going to try to fill up that channel. After that, we'll carefully slide this on. Now let's coat the outside bearing and put that on there as well. Now we're going to take this. You're going to notice that it has a little piton. That needs to line up with the axle right there. Start it in. We're going to torque this to 60 foot-pounds. If you're using the original bearings, you're going to de-adjust it 7 clicks. If you're replacing the bearings and you have brand new bearings in here, torque it to 60 and then de-adjust it 5 clicks. Now I'm going to take this back 7 clicks. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now we're going to go ahead and clean up the axle. You're going to notice along this area here, you have a rubber O-ring. Make sure that that's in good condition and that it's clean. Once we get this cleaned up, we'll move along. Once the axle's clean, make sure you clean up these bolts as well. Get off all that blue thread locker, clean the threads, and then apply new blue thread locker. With all the bolt threads cleaned up and some blue thread locker, we're going to come back over to the truck. We'll clean up this area along here. Make sure we don't have any gear oil inside of these holes. Grab the axle, slide it in, and start in the bolts. Now it's going to be time to go ahead and put the rotor on, but before I do that, I wanted to show you about adjusting this. You're going to use a spoon, or you can use a screwdriver, come right through the backside here, and then you're just going to go like that up against the star wheel that's located behind here. Now if you haven't already, make sure you clean up the mating surface on this hub area and on the backside of your rotor. After that, let's continue on to adding some copper never sees. Now let's take our rotor, slide it over this. Now we're going to take our 2 caliper bolts, make sure the threads are clean, and add a little bit of red thread locker. After that, grab your caliper, slide it over here, we'll snug them up, and then torque the bolts to 150 foot-pounds. Let's get the wheel up on here. Start all of your lug nuts, we'll snug them up, and then we'll torque them to 165 foot-pounds. Now that we have the wheel torqued, let's continue on to tightening all of these bolts. We're going to torque these to 80 foot-pounds. Torqued. Now you're going to want to come over to your fill plug for your differential. Go ahead and remove that and check your fluid level. If you don't have any fluid that comes trickling out of here, you need to add some of your manufacturer specified fluid. Okay, so now that we're sure that the differential fluid's full, we're going to continue on to jacking up one side of the differential. Essentially, if you did the right side, you want to make sure that you jack up the left side. That way their gear oil will make its way down through the axle tube, down to those bearings. Now at this point, I'm going to leave this for approximately 5 minutes and we'll let it do its thing. After that, we'll put it back down on the ground. If you're doing both sides, obviously tip it to the other side as well. Okay, so this has been sitting for a while now. I'm going to go ahead and lower it down safely. Now we'll just double check our fluid. We want to make sure that the gear oil is full. We're also going to get inside the truck. We'll pump up the brake and then we'll take it for a road test.